This Family Life News podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you.
It's the Noon Report from Family Life, bringing a Christian worldview to what's happening in New York, Pennsylvania, across the country, and around the world. Weather with Kevin Williams, and faith-focused feature stories with the Family Life News team. Now, here's what's happening.
Terrorism on the home front. Good afternoon. Welcome aboard. We're learning more today about the man who rammed his bomb-rigged truck into a Jewish synagogue yesterday in West Bloomfield, Michigan. 41-year-old Ayman Ghazali, a Lebanese American, was shot dead by security before he could inflict any harm. That synagogue was hosting a preschool at the time of the attack. Correspondent Scott McFarland.
Black smoke could be seen billowing from the building as dozens of officers arrived at the scene and quickly locked down the area. Frightened parents ran to the school to pick up their children. Emergency responders found explosive materials in the suspect's vehicle.
The security guard who killed the driver was hit by the truck. 30 first responders were treated for smoke inhalation. The FBI's Jennifer Runyon.
We are leading the investigation right now as a targeted act of violence against the Jewish community.
Ghazali's two brothers and a niece and nephew were killed in an Israeli airstrike in Lebanon 10 days ago. Scary scene yesterday at Old Dominion University in Norfolk, Virginia. A shooting there left an ROTC instructor dead and two others wounded. The gunman, identified as former Army National Guardsman Mohammed Jalla. He served time in prison for conspiring with ISIS to attack the U.S. homeland. Elizabeth Vargas with News Nation.
And he specifically targeted these ROTC students. He actually asked somebody, is this the ROTC class, before going in and opening fire. He also shouted Allahu Akbar as he opened fire. Again, sounds like terrorism.
Several ROTC students were able to subdue the shooter before he could kill again. The suspect was eventually stabbed to death by a student with a knife. The FBI's Dominique Evans.
The brave ROTC members in that room subdued him. And if not for them, I'm not sure, what else he may have done.
Prosecutors had recommended a 20-year prison sentence for the terrorist when he was convicted back in 2017. He was sentenced to just 11 years. It's still not clear why this guy got out of prison early. But former FBI agent Nicole Parker says he should never have been released.
It's absolutely mind-boggling to me that an individual who pled guilty of providing material support to ISIS was released to walk freely in the United States. Literally, a convicted terrorist was free under the Biden administration.
The gunman was a naturalized U.S. citizen from Sierra Leone. The U.S. and Israel continue their aerial assault on Iran as Operation Epic Fury nears its third week. War Secretary Pete Hegseth at the Pentagon today.
The IRGC and Iranian regime sees only two things on the side of aircraft: the Stars and Stripes and the Star of David. The evil regime's worst nightmare.
There's word today the new Ayatollah was severely injured in a missile strike in the early stages of the war and may have had one of his legs amputated. Victoria Coates with the Heritage Foundation says there's disarray within the Iranian regime.
Nobody's making strategic decisions. They're just firing off pot shots left and right. And I think we're going to start to see that unravel.
A day after the new Ayatollah vowed revenge for attacks on his country, President Trump took to social media to announce Iran's leaders are being wiped from the face of the earth, he says. CBS's Michael Toscano.
Trump went on to write, "They've been killing innocent people all over the world for 47 years, and now I, as the 47th president of the United States of America, am killing them." And he added, "What a great honor it is to do so."
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the war is crushing Iran and its chief terror proxy, Hezbollah, in Lebanon. The BBC's Lucy Williamson.
He talked about the enormous achievements that were changing the balance of power in the Middle East and beyond. This is no longer the same Iran, no longer the same Middle East, and this is not the same Israel, he said.
Meanwhile, an American military refueling aircraft has crashed in western Iraq. 2 planes involved in the incident. One landed safely, the other did not. Joint Chiefs Chairman General Dan Kane.
Our service members make an incredible sacrifice to go forward and do the things that the nation asks of them. It's a reminder of the true cost of the dedication and commitment of the Joint Force.
CENTCOM says the crash was not the result of any hostile action or friendly fire. 4 crew members aboard were killed, and that brings to 11 the total number of U.S. casualties in Operation Epic Fury. Jury deliberations underway in Los Angeles in a landmark social media trial. A 20-year-old woman says she became addicted to social media at the age of 9. Companies like Meta and Google are accused of creating addictive algorithms that are harmful to users' health. It's the first time ever big tech has faced a jury trial over its social media platforms. Congress has failed again to pass a bill that would end the partial government shutdown. Fox's Chad Pergram has the latest from Capitol Hill.
Top Senate leaders tangling but getting nowhere. Senate Democrats blocked a 4th DHS funding plan.
The motion is not agreed to.
TSA officers exasperated, working without pay for the 3rd time since fall.
We are hurting. We are trying to do the best that we can.
Hundreds of TSA employees have quit since the shutdown began.
Democrats are refusing to fund the Department of Homeland Security until they see changes with immigration enforcement tactics. Bipartisan legislation in the U.S. Senate could make housing more affordable.
The 21st Century Road to Housing Act was written by senators who don't often see eye to eye, Republican Tim Scott and Democrat Elizabeth Warren. The bill passed the Senate with 89 votes. The 300-page piece of legislation creates a series of grants and pilot programs for housing construction and will keep Wall Street from buying up single-family homes. The bill now goes to the House, where it faces an uncertain future. I'm Rory O'Neill.
NASA's hauling its Artemis 2 moon rocket back out to the launch pad next week in Cape Canaveral, Florida. The space agency is getting Artemis ready for a long-delayed blast-off as early as April 1st. That flight will send 4 astronauts on a 9-day trip around the moon. It's the first crewed mission to the moon since Apollo 17 way back in 1972. Still to come on the Noon Report. Winds of change about to blow. Farmers worry about fertilizer. And seeing green this weekend.
Good afternoon. I'm Kevin Williams, tracking a windy system promising snow and rain showers and some unsettled weather as we head into the weekend. I'll have forecast details up in 10.
All right, Kevin, for the record, the official start of spring is 1 week from today. Just saying. A high wind warning in effect through early Saturday for Chautauqua, Erie, Niagara, Genesee, Orleans, and Wyoming counties in western New York. Heather Kenyon with the National Weather Service in Buffalo.
That strong cold front that's going to bring in those winds will also bring in colder weather. And we are expecting some accumulating snow tonight, mainly across the higher terrain where we could see 4 to 7 inches. Again, mainly on the higher terrain, southern Erie, Wyoming, Chautauqua, and Cattaraugus County.
Erie County, Pennsylvania is under a high wind warning through 8 o'clock tonight. Those winds could gust to 60 miles per hour at times downwind of the Great Lakes. A man whose body was discovered on a rural road in Andover, New York, 55 years ago, has finally been identified. The victim, 35-year-old Clyde A. Coppage. He'd been living in Genesee, Pennsylvania at the time of his disappearance in 1970, but had never been reported missing. Genesee is located in Potter County. Coppage's death remains under an active investigation. A man convicted of double homicide decades ago in Wayne County, New York, is now free, and that is sparking outrage. Chad Campbell was just 14 when he killed a 15-year-old girl and a 1-year-old child back in 1990. Former Erie County District Attorney John Flynn.
I get it. He was 14 years old at the time. I understand he was a minor. But, at some point, we as a society have to realize that if you do something so egregious, so awful, you should never get out of jail.
Flynn says while he believes in rehabilitation, this is not an individual who should be re-entering society. The 50-year-old Wayne County killer will be monitored and have check-ins with his parole officer for the rest of his life. Funeral arrangements have been finalized for a fallen Pennsylvania state trooper. Family Life Sarah Harnish has that story.
Corporal Timothy J. O'Connor was shot and killed after he pulled over a reported erratic driver west of Philadelphia. That driver took his own life. Services will be held at St. Joseph Parish in Downingtown with public viewing Tuesday, March 17th from 4:30 till 8 p.m. The funeral will be on Wednesday but is not open to the public. O'Connor leaves behind a wife and a young daughter. He is the 105th member of the Pennsylvania State Police to die in the line of duty. Sarah Harnish, Family Life News.
A new poll shows a majority of New Yorkers are forced to choose between groceries and bare necessities like rent, mortgage, utilities, and transportation. The survey finds 2/3 of state residents are feeling the affordability crunch. Half of all respondents say they are incurring debt just to pay for food. New rule changes for SNAP benefits is impacting hundreds of thousands of low-income families across the listening area. Local food banks admit they're having trouble keeping up with demand. Julie Tedesco is president and CEO of FoodLink in Rochester, New York.
Over the coming months, we'll see longer lines at pantries and meal programs, which is why we are doing our very best, again, not just to distribute food, but to ensure people have the information they need to retain those benefits if possible.
Tedesco tells Spectrum News one of the major reasons for the longer lines is new work rule requirements for the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. Joel Berg with Hunger Free America.
These policies aren't helping people move towards independence. They're helping people move to soup kitchens and food pantries, and they're failing.
The federal welfare to work changes took effect March the 1st. The Trump White House says too many able-bodied adults are not working, and it's robbing those who really need food assistance. New York Governor Kathy Hochul's expanding access to child care at nearly a dozen SUNY schools.
The governor says 5 community colleges will offer childcare during evenings and weekends to better align with the schedules of student parents enrolled in high-demand SUNY programs, including SUNY Reconnect. Other campuses will create additional spots for infants and toddlers. Hochul says the state is reinforcing its commitment to meeting the needs of adult learners and offering them a path to upward mobility.
Natalie Migliori with that report. Democrats continue to beat the drum for tax increases on the super rich in New York. They want a so-called millionaire's tax included in the final budget. So far, Governor Hochul remains opposed.
What I want to make sure we are smart about is having a system in place where it's not just taxing for the sake of taxing. New Yorkers cannot pay anymore. We have to cut their costs of living.
The state legislature wants to raise taxes on anyone making over $5 million a year in New York. They've also proposed a hike in the corporate tax rate, as well as a slew of other so-called revenue raisers. The budget is due April 1st. The war in the Middle East is coming at a bad time for area farmers who are getting ready for spring planting. The problem is higher prices for fertilizer. Crop farmer Dan Glossing.
Fertilizer is food for the plants.
And right now, much of it cannot pass through the Strait of Hormuz, which has been choked off by Iran.
If we could get the products moving, it would have a minimal impact on the price of fertilizer for this spring, but the longer we go on, the more we're going to have an effect on the price.
Glossing does not know how much the price of fertilizer will spike due to this ongoing war. In some markets, it's already shot up 70% in just the past month. The streets of Syracuse, Buffalo, and Rochester will be lined with plenty of green tomorrow and Sunday for annual St. Patrick's Day parades. The one in Syracuse steps off at noon Saturday in Clinton Square. Rochester's parade begins a half hour later at the corner of East Avenue and Alexander Street. Buffalo's St. Patty's Day parade will happen on Sunday. Watch for road closures and parking restrictions. Pi Day is tomorrow, but not the kind you're thinking of. Family Life's Brian Query.
Pi Day is observed on March 14th since 3, 1, and 4 are the first three significant figures of the mathematical constant pi, which was first calculated thousands of years ago. Pi Day began when physicist Larry Shaw gave his entire staff fruit pies and tea on 3/14 at 1:59 p.m., representing the first 5 digits after the decimal. Turns out March 14th is also the birthday of Albert Einstein, and in case you're wondering, the record for the most memorized decimal places of pi, over 70,000. So today, celebrate by calculating some impressive math problem or eating a slice of your favorite pie. And this is a good place to end this story. Otherwise, I may go on about pie forever. Brian Query, Family Life News.
He does like his pie. Thank you very much, Brian. And still to come on the Noon Report, we've got a winter weather alert 1 week before spring. The Capital Connection crew ready to sound off on all that's happening in Albany and Harrisburg. And at the end of the broadcast, what 35 million of us have in common.
Welcome to Breakpoint, a daily look at an ever-changing culture through the lens of unchanging truth. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet. In a sermon clip that was posted last week on X, U.S. Senate hopeful James Tallarico said this: in the Gospel of Thomas, which was later omitted from the Bible by church officials, the Gospel of Thomas quotes Jesus as saying, when you make the male and female one and the same, when the male is not male and the female is not female, then you will enter the kingdom of God, end quote. Now, what he's offering here is what might be called a zombie argument. It's a claim which, like monsters in movies, keeps getting up and shambling around no matter how many times they're killed. Other examples of zombie arguments include calling an unborn child just a clump of cells, though sonograms and ultrasounds have shown for years it's not true, or that the same-sex attracted are born this way, when even advocates of the movement abandoned that slogan years ago. In truth, most scholars have never considered the Gospel of Thomas as being on par with the actual Gospels, and yet those seeking a feminist revisioning of Christianity continue to claim it as a legitimate source of what Christians believed before it was suppressed by the authorities. The truth is, if we borrowed Voltaire's quip about the Holy Roman Empire, the Gospel of Thomas is neither a gospel, nor of Thomas, nor is it scripture. It's also neither Christian nor feminist. First, despite Tallarico's claim that the Gospel of Thomas was kicked out of the Bible, it just isn't so. In fact, it was never in the Bible in the first place. It's a 2nd century document which, despite being named after an apostle, was written by people who never knew Jesus, nor even by a friend of him. As someone commented on X, this is like a fan fiction of Jane Austen written today being described as kicked out of the Austen canon centuries from now. Nor is the Gospel of Thomas a Christian document. The Gospel of Thomas was discovered in the 20th century in Egypt as part of an ancient library of Gnostic sources. Though Gnosticism borrowed Christian, Jewish, and pagan terms and concepts, it was its own religion with diverse beliefs. Gnosticism comes from the Greek word gnosis, which means knowledge. The basic idea is that the physical world is an illusion or even evil. Some strands even describe creation as the result of an abortion of a higher being. Salvation is acquired by rejecting the material world and securing the secret inner knowledge. And from the very beginning of the church, for these reasons and for many others, Gnosticism was condemned as heresy. It's also odd for those hoping to advance feminist ideas to appeal to the Gospel of Thomas. From Dan Brown and the Da Vinci Code a generation ago to Tallarico today, the Gospel of Thomas is often portrayed as an alternative, more feminine-friendly source about Christ. But in line 114 of the Gospel of Thomas, it quotes Peter asking Jesus to send Mary away, for women are not worthy of life. And unlike the Jesus of the Gospel, Thomas' version of Christ does not affirm her worth. Instead, promises to give her an upgrade. Quote, look, I will draw her in so as to make her male, so that she too may become a living male spirit similar to you. But I say to you, every woman who makes herself male will enter the kingdom of heaven, end quote. In other words, the context for this notion of erasing male and female is flatly misogynist. While it's puzzling that critics of Christianity continue to resurrect this zombie gospel, Dr. Glenn Sunshine has noted that people like Tallarico, who attend theologically liberal seminaries, never read conservative books. They simply do not know that their institutionalized reinterpretations of the faith have been thoroughly rejected. Because the Bible affirms the beauty and the goodness of God's creation, so does Christianity, and that includes the creation of his image bearers, both as male and female. Contrary to the Gospel of Thomas, women do not need to become men in order to be saved. And if they did, well, that certainly would not be good news. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet with Breakpoint.
Thank Thank you much, John. Let's head outside. Kevin Williams.
Here is your family life forecast for this afternoon. Cloudy with snow, some rain showers mixing in, becoming very windy, especially near the Great Lakes. Temperatures this afternoon reaching the mid-30s to the mid-40s. It'll be windy tonight with mixed showers changing to snow and flurries. Low temperatures tonight, 20s and low 30s. Tomorrow, blustery, especially in the morning, flurries, then sun. High temps, mid-30s to mid-40s. And Sunday, cloudy, snow, then rain showers, becoming very windy with high temperatures Sunday in the 40s.
All right, spring officially begins a week from today. Thank you, Kevin. Hey, it's Friday, folks. Congratulations, you've made it. And this is the Noon Report on Family Life. This is Capital Connection. Fridays during the Noon Report, we give you direct connection to all that's happening in Albany and Harrisburg with the experts on the issues at the state capitals. They are Stephen Hayford with New York Families and Michael Geer at the Pennsylvania Family Institute. Stephen, I want to begin with you talking about being on the wrong side of an issue. That's where New York's Attorney General Letitia James seems to spend most of her time. She has ordered that a New York City hospital continue offering irreversible sex change operations on minors. This hospital had ceased doing that. The Attorney General steps in and says, you will do this. What is her fixation with the transing of children in the state of New York?
It's tough to tell why the Attorney General is so fixated on this. Perhaps she's doing this to flaunt and highlight her opposition to Trump administration policies. Another possibility is the Attorney General is running for re-election this fall. Perhaps she thinks the far left is going to reward her with campaign money if she does things like this. Another possibility, though, is that Letitia James truly and wrongly believes the best thing for kids with gender dysphoria is to be transed as teens. And it's a horrifying thought, but in this particular case, it is possible. Whatever her reasons are for this fixation, Bob, though, New York Christians have to remain engaged and keep pushing back.
Definitely. Michael, we've talked about this issue before, but it's been a while. House Bill 300, the so-called Fairness Act, you argue there's nothing fair about it. In fact, you said on this program, it's one of the most dangerous pieces of legislation concocted in some time in Harrisburg. The Judiciary Committee, House Judiciary Committee has voted this bill out of committee, party line vote. Why is this legislation so dangerous?
Well, this is a bill that would add sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression to the state human relations code. And what we have seen in jurisdictions and states that have this is it's used as a punishment for those who stand for biblical principles related to marriage, human sexuality, etc. So Christian ministries are at risk. Individuals like the Jack Phillips or the Barronelle Stutzman cases where they're just trying to live out their conscience in their business are punished by the government. We've been fighting this legislation now for 30 years, and we hope to be successful, but it takes the voice of the people to raise their voice and to say, no, we don't want this.
It's the big debate in New York, Stephen, this so-called millionaire's tax. The mayor of New York City has really gone behind this, and now it's kind of put Governor Hochul between a rock and a hard place. Both the Senate and the Assembly endorsing this millionaire's tax. The governor says she won't have anything to do with it. What are the chances that she'll have to cave and put this in the final budget deal?
Bob, I don't think the chances are very good that this ends up in the final budget. Governor Hochul has made it clear repeatedly she doesn't want to raise income taxes on anybody, including millionaires. That's a long-held position. In an election year, I don't think the governor's going to want to look as though she caved in on a long-held position under pressure. Also, there's a political dynamic that's in play here. Our lieutenant governor, Antonio Delgado, was running a primary challenge to the governor and was running as a left-wing alternative to her. However, he's abandoned his campaign, and so she doesn't have an opponent running to her left. What she has is Bruce Blakeman running as a Republican who is going to pounce on her if she does raise taxes on people. I don't think that there's much political incentive for her to give in on this, and she holds most of the cards in budget negotiations. The big question, though, Bob, is the legislature has proposed to spend $272 billion. Why does our government spend so much money? money?
I don't know. I cannot understand that price tag. Maybe somebody smarter than me can explain it to me, but that's the GDP of most countries on planet Earth, and it's just New York State. Michael, some history was made in Harrisburg yesterday. Representative Clint Owlett, a good friend of yours, chaired the first ever anti-human trafficking caucus meeting. This is a newly formed committee to crack down on human trafficking, which remains a huge problem in Pennsylvania. I wonder how difficult has it been to try and get out in front of this problem when you look at the proliferation of the pornography industry and the prevalence of social media and how that has exacerbated this problem.
All of those things are significant factors in trying to combat this scourge on Pennsylvania and nationally, frankly. Human trafficking is one of the fastest growing crimes, especially in rural Pennsylvania, where it's often hidden, happening right in homes through online grooming on apps and platforms. The explosion of the pornography industry really worsens this by fueling demand for exploitation in the production of this. So it's a tough nut to crack. We again salute Clint Owlett and other members of the legislature in trying to get out in front of this and finally put this scourge out of business.
Yeah. Stephen, I wanted to ask you, as New York begins to pave the way for physician-assisted suicide, it becomes reality in early August. I saw a study this week I had to ask you about. Maybe you saw it too. It shows 45 Canadians a day are dying from doctor-assisted suicide. The death culture that is about to invade New York, this Medical Aid in Dying Act. What concerns you the most?
Bob, I wish there was just one thing that concerned me the most about this. There are several concerns. One concern is that people are going to choose this because they've been told something that turns out not to have been accurate. Another problem is the duty to die, the perception that people may have if they are very ill or disabled that they shouldn't be a burden to other people and therefore that they should choose to take their lives. And that's a feeling that people can have when this becomes legalized and normalized. Another concern is a possible increase in the overall suicide rate. And finally, I'm concerned about the potential expansion of this law, which we know is something that advocates will pursue.
Yeah. Mike, I want to talk about education for a bit. Public schools in this country have lost close to 2 million students since COVID. I couldn't believe that. So why is it that lawmakers in Harrisburg are having a hard time supporting school choice?
They're just special interest groups, namely the teachers union and other education establishment groups that simply fight school choice tooth and nail. They want to keep the same brick and mortar public assignment system that we have had in place for decades because that means jobs for them and their continued control over education. But the handwriting, I think, is on the wall for school choice to be advancing. It's happening in other states and it needs to happen quickly here in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I had to check this next story twice, Stephen, to make sure I was correct. Queens Democratic State Senator James Sanders is sponsoring a bill that would bump the salaries of state lawmakers to $180,000 a year. Stephen, they're already the highest paid in the country. What's his justification for this?
Well, Bob, the justification from Senator Sanders is he mentions the legislators have to oversee one of the largest state budgets in the U.S. He mentions continuous legislative sessions, extended budget and policy negotiations, and emergency and crisis response functions. If overseeing a huge budget justifies a bigger salary, then the legislature can just cut the budget and not have to ask for a raise. As far as continuous legislative sessions are concerned, our legislature is in town from January through June, and unless a special session is called, they don't have to come back to Albany after that. When it comes to budget and policy negotiations, New York is notorious. We have 3 people in a room, so the regular legislators are usually not that involved in the nitty-gritty of those negotiations. And then the most absurd, the emergency and crisis response functions. And Bob, I had to laugh thinking back to 2020 when the COVID pandemic hit and our legislature granted Governor Andrew Cuomo emergency powers and then left town. That wasn't much of an emergency and crisis response function. So I find the senator's justifications to be anemic at best.
Yeah. And then finally, Mike, we began with the House Judiciary Committee. We'll end with it. Senate Bill 9 is this Fairness to Women's Sports Act, which you have championed for years to get biological boys out of girls' sports. It doesn't seem to be going anywhere. Explain what's happened in the House Judiciary Committee this week.
Well, the normal course of action in legislation is if it passes one chamber, it moves over to the other chamber, they assign it to a committee, the committee makes a vote up or down, and then if it passes that committee, it then goes to the full floor for a vote. What is happening here is that Democrat leadership don't want a vote on the girls' sports bill, and so the Judiciary Committee referred the bill to another committee, to the Children and Youth Committee. But previous to it coming to the Judiciary Committee, it was in the Education Committee, and then before that it was in the Health Committee. They just keep moving it from place to place to avoid a vote because they're beholden to their special interests.
Yeah, we call that kicking the can down the road or punting the football, whatever you want to call it, is outrage there in Harrisburg. Hey guys, we've been a lot of places, but if folks have questions about any of the topics discussed today, or they simply want to learn more about the Pennsylvania Family Institute, Michael, where can they find you online?
PAFamily.org.
And stay informed on all the issues in New York. It's budget season in Albany. Stephen, where can folks learn more about New York families?
NewYorkFamilies.org.
All right, great show, guys. Capital Connection comes your way every Friday during the Noon Report or online anytime at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and FamilyLife.org.
Good afternoon. Here is your Family Life regional weather forecast. We're tracking a pretty intense area of low pressure over Wisconsin and Lake Michigan this afternoon. It's going to generate wind, snow, mixed rain over the next 12 to 18 hours. And we do it again with an even more potent system later Sunday into early next week. But this afternoon, cloudy with snow, some rain showers mixing in, becoming very windy, especially near the Great Lakes. Temperatures this afternoon reaching the mid-30s to the mid-40s, and there will be a coating to a couple inches of snow favoring the higher elevations of western and central New York. It'll be windy tonight, with mixed showers changing to snow and flurries. A few inches could accumulate over the highest elevations of western and central New York. Low temperatures tonight, 20s and low 30s. Tomorrow, blustery, especially in the morning, flurries, then sun. High temps, mid-30s to mid-40s. And Sunday, cloudy, snow, then rain showers, and becoming very windy with high temperatures Sunday in the 40s.
All right, lots to take in there. Thank you very much, Kevin Williams. Finally at noon, St. Patrick's Day is next Tuesday, but we couldn't wait that long. Correspondent Bree Tennis says 35 million Americans claim some sort of Irish ancestry.
That's about 10% of the U.S. population, but that small group parties big. There will be hundreds of St. Patrick's Day celebrations across the country this weekend. Parades, festivals, leprechaun runs, dyeing the river in Chicago, and don't forget the pub crawls, Irish music, and lots of dancing. It's enough to make anyone want to be Irish, and on St. Patrick's Day, you can be, because he wasn't Irish either. St. Patrick was British. I'm Bree Tennis.
All right, Bree, thank you very much. Pass the corned beef and cabbage. I can't wait. That's our world, the world we live in. Friday, the 13th of March. I'm Bob Price. Family Life News.
You've been listening to the Noon Report, heard weekdays on Family Life. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to this Family Life News podcast. If you've been encouraged by what you've heard, please share it with others and click the subscribe button to automatically receive future episodes. Family Life is a listener-supported ministry. Podcasts like this are made possible by your financial partnership. Find out more at familylife.org.